Hi, this is a short orientation video for those running the online version of the Canadian Mathematical Grade J competition. The Grade J is designed for mathematical problem solvers up to 8th grade, or Year 8 as some say it. The Grade J competition is organized by the Canadian Mathematical Society, the CMS, every autumn. This video walks you through the task of supervising or proctoring students in the room writing the Grade J online. As the proctor, you run the room for the students. Before the competition day, you get the access keys that will let you and your students log into the online competition. On the day itself, you prepare the room and get yourself and the students connected to the Grade J online. You start all the students at the same time and they begin their work. During the test, you monitor the students to ensure they abide by the rules or provide help with any minor technical problem they encounter. When the test ends, you report your observations and indicate whether anyone broke the rules. Let's first make sure we understand some terminology we use. Proctors are the adults in charge of the room with the students. They supervise and manage the behavior of students. School organizers are the staff or faculty who are organizing the Grade J for their school. They're the ones who order the exams for the students and have access to the scores later. They're the primary contacts for the Canadian Mathematical Society who run the Grade J competition. It should be clear that at small schools or organizations, there is usually one person performing both of these roles of proctor and school organizer. However, at larger or multilingual schools, students may need to be divided into 2 or more groups, so the number of proctors might be larger. A sitting refers to a particular room at a particular time for a particular group of students. It would have one proctor in charge of it, although in large rooms with many students, other adults may also be assisting the proctor. Small schools typically have just one sitting. Normally, it's the organizer at the school who determines how many sittings are needed, what time they begin, and who will be the proctor in charge of each sitting. A sitting code is a short random code you and your students type in, which uniquely identifies your sitting. You share the sitting code with your students on competition day. User keys are also short random codes, but they're private to each individual. Proctors use proctor keys and students use student keys to uniquely identify themselves and to get the appropriate access level to the online competition, so they're never shared. In fact, the proctor key that you use lets you monitor the students, begin the test, and make certain changes. Therefore, it's vital to keep your proctor key hidden from the students. Although proctor and student keys look similar, proctor keys always begin with a P for proctor, and student keys always begin with an S. Let's look at your first task as a proctor, getting the access information. This should happen in the day or days before the competition. Normally, you get this information from your school organizer. If you yourself are the organizer, you get this information from the CMS through your teacher portal. We recommend to the school organizers that if they are passing this information along to proctors, then they should prepare an envelope. I just received this envelope of access keys from my school organizer. I dump out the envelope and verify that I have one proctor credentials slip and several small student key slips. There should be 5 here, one for me to hand out to each expected student. Once I verify the contents, I return it all to the envelope and set it safely aside until competition day. These are the proctor's duties on the day of the competition. You prepare the room, the equipment, and provide scrap paper for your students. Use your blackboard, or whatever you have on hand, to write up some details for them to read or refer to, and get yourself and your students connected to the online competition. Here's an example of what I would write up on the board for students to read as they enter the room. Most importantly, they will need the URL you have on your Proctor credentials slip and the sitting code. Because the competition is happening in various time zones across the country, and indeed even overseas, we want the students to refrain from discussing the questions or solutions for a good 24 hours after they finish it. So reclaiming the scrap paper is to help reduce the likelihood that they will do this. The questions and the official answers will be posted to the Grade J website for you and your students to discuss, if you want, within a few days after the competition. Once the room is ready, you should log into the competition yourself and get registered as a proctor. Now, I'll get connected using the URL I was given. I see this login page. If I want it in French, I select that using the buttons in the top right. Now I enter my name, the sitting code, and my private Proctor key from my Proctor credentials slip. Then I click Next. I notice on this page it's detected my school correctly. Now it needs my email address. This is only used for troubleshooting, no mailing lists or marketing. When I click Continue, I see what's called the Proctor dashboard. We'll talk more about this later. So now you're ready to treat your students and get them oriented. We recommend that either as they come in or once they're all settled, you hand out some scrap paper and one student key slip to each of them. You point out the information you've written on the board for them and remind them of the length of time and the rules, and then ask them to connect to the URL and get registered. The 90-minute timer won't start until after they've registered. Let's look at what should be happening on a student's screen as she connects and registers. The student goes to the URL you wrote on the chalkboard and then sees the same initial screen you did. She can change the language if needed. She enters her name, copies the sitting code from your chalkboard, and copies the student key from her own paper slip you gave her. Then she clicks Next. Like you saw, she would also see the correct name of the school. The software then asks for a few basic details that determine if she qualifies for prizes and recognition as an official competitor or if she's writing as an unofficial participant. Because we have an age restriction for official competitors, we need to ask for a birth date. It's optional for the student to indicate a gender. We only ask this to measure how well we are reaching underrepresented groups. Then she clicks Next. Now the rules are displayed, and the students need to agree to them to proceed. Of particular note, calculators and electronic assistance devices are not permitted, except with prearranged written permission from the CMS. So, if you expect to have students that need special accommodation, please contact us by email well before the day of the competition. This page also describes the structure of the Grade J competition. Of particular note here, unanswered multiple choice questions earn a single point each, but incorrectly answered questions get 0 points, so the students should usually avoid guessing on these. After students agree to the rules, they'll see a standby screen that makes them wait for you to start the competition. Let's look at what you will see on the Proctor dashboard as the students are registering. While the students are registering and connecting, you'll see them pop up on the dashboard by name and the student key you gave them. It indicates whether each student is still in the process of registering or are ready and waiting for you. If you're missing anyone or see someone still stuck in registering, you can go to that student and assist them if they need help. When everyone is ready, or you don't want to wait any longer for stragglers, you can press your green Start button. That releases the ready students to begin the first question and starts their 90-minute timers. Students who finish registering a bit later will still get their full 90 minutes, so their time ends later to ensure that. So what happens during the competition? Let's see how it looks for the student. Here's an example with questions taken from the 2020 Grade J. Each question appears on its own page. Normally, the student is expected to click the choice and then click Next. In the upper right-hand corner of the page, the student can always see how much time remains. The Grade J is divided into 3 sections, A, B, and C, which have 5 questions each. At the top of the page is a question navigation bar that lets the student jump around as desired between questions. As the student answers questions, the coloring of the navigation bar changes to hint to the student which questions are answered and which are still unanswered. Students can always revisit any question and change their response, or even clear out their earlier response and leave the question unanswered. While the students work, it's your job as the proctor to continually monitor the students to ensure no one is cheating or encountering a technological problem. For example, if their device battery dies. If anyone is behaving dishonestly or suspiciously, you must make a note of it, as you'll enter that into the proctor report later. It's up to you whether to eject the student from the room or to follow up with administration as your policies require. On the dashboard, you can also monitor the remaining time for each student, and even click a name to see how many questions that student has answered so far. Notice that this student has more time remaining. It's because she started a few minutes later than everyone else. If you're interested, you can take a look at the actual Grade J questions yourself. There's a View Test link on your screen that you can click on. Of course, you can't submit your own responses to the questions, but you can attempt them and discuss them with students at a later date if you like. You must, though, wait at least 24 hours before discussing the questions or solutions with anyone. One more note about the multiple choices and question ordering. These may be randomized on an individual level. So, for example, one student's question A4 may appear for another student as question A2, and the correct answer for that question may be displayed as choice C for the first student and choice A for the second. This strategy is used by our software to reduce the risk of successful cheating between students. Often some students may finish ahead of time. A student ready to hand in the questions will get to the review page. It's the R in the top navigation bar. This page summarizes which questions are still unanswered, as a warning, so the student either intends to leave them blank or goes back to work on them. In this case, questions B5 and C5 are left unanswered. But this student is happy with that. So she clicks Hand it in. On your Proctor dashboard, you'll see when students have finished by handing in their work. Immediate marking is not available, as we must wait at least until we've received all the student work worldwide before releasing the scoring and the answers. As students finish, you can choose to allow them to leave the room or not, in accordance with your school policies. Be sure to collect their scrap paper as they go. Frequently, students will use up all the available time before finishing, or will keep checking over their work with all remaining time until time is called. You, as the proctor, don't need to call time. The software does that, although you will see it happening on your dashboard. For the student, as time counts down, the timer color changes to alert her when 5 minutes are left. Then again for the last minute. When the time actually expires, an appropriate message appears on the screen and the student can no longer change any responses. You really only have two things left to do: collect the used scrap paper from your students and file your Proctor report online. This normally only takes a minute or two. The Proctor report is where you indicate whether each student, as far as you could tell, complied with the rules, or if something suspicious or dishonest was noticed. You need to click the checkbox for each student that complied with the rules, or, in your own words, type in any observations that we should know about. You can do both for a student, that is, type in your observations about them, but also still click the complied checkbox. That indicates to us that, despite the observations, you think there is no significant problem here. You have to give every student either a check mark, a written observation, or both. When you finish the Proctor report, you're done. Thanks! We hope you find proctoring your Grade J students to be a smooth and efficient process. If you have any questions for us, you can email us at the address you see.